Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call to order this committee, the whole meeting of February 12th, 2026. At this point in time, I will put out a call if there are any declarations of interest for today's agenda. Seeing no hands raised, we will carry on. Business arising from minutes. Next, we will move on to our delegations. We have one delegation this morning regarding a county-wide stormwater management master plan, and we have 3 guests who are going to be participating online. So I'd like to welcome them to go ahead and put their cameras on at this point in time. There we go. Okay. Good morning, gentlemen. So thank you very much for participating here online. We are here in the chamber. We have a few of our council members who are also online to follow along with you. So at this point in time, I'd like to offer you the floor if you would like to make your introductions of who you are and who you represent, and then carry on into the content of your delegation. And typically what we do at the county council level here is we'll hear the delegation. We don't do motions necessarily afterwards, but we will be taking in your information for contemplation. So thank you very much. We appreciate your participation with us this morning. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Warden and members of council. My name is Bradley Mulligan, and I am here today with my esteemed colleagues to speak about the critical importance of a cohesive stormwater master plan for Grey County and the direction Grey County and its 9 municipalities choose to take moving forward. Stormwater is no longer a background infrastructure issue. It directly affects public safety, the integrity of our roads, bridges, private property, agricultural lands, drinking water sources, and overall health of our watersheds. Across Grey County, the impacts of more frequent and more intense rainfall events are being felt already, exposing the limitations of systems designed for past conditions and relying on legacy stormwater management practices that, in many cases, are contributing to the degradation of our watersheds. The 3 of us here today are here to provide assistance, education, and insight into viable, best-in-class stormwater management techniques and practices. With increasing pressure from the provincial government to accelerate housing development, we have already seen in other municipalities within Grey County what appears to be a disregard for watershed protection. This will result in adverse impacts to agricultural lands, tourism, groundwater, and drinking water quality, and both public and private property. And this is often stemming from good enough legacy dump and run stormwater management approaches. As a taxpayer in Grey County, I struggle to understand the disparity we see across this county. For example, Grey Highlands rejected spending approximately $150,000 on a stormwater management plan, while the town of Blue Mountains has invested over $650,000 in a progressive and forward-looking plan. As a taxpayer, are we to conclude one of 2 things? Either some municipalities are unwilling to invest in protecting future generations, their constituents, and the environment, or there is such significant disparity in available tax resources among the 9 municipalities that some simply cannot afford to do so. If the latter is true, then does it not follow that true taxpayer accountability would be better served by Grey County developing a best-in-class, best practices, countywide stormwater master management plan, one that would allow all 9 municipalities to adopt and tailor to their specific regional conditions and needs, rather than spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on 9 separate and potentially inconsistent plans and studies. Council now faces a clear choice. Continue planning to minimum standards on outdated guidelines or adopt a forward-looking, climate-resilient stormwater master management plan template designed to reduce long-term risks and costs. A plan that merely meets historic standards will fail future councils, future residents, and will continue to damage our precious watersheds. We recognize that 10 minutes is not nearly enough time to address this issue in the depth it deserves. We would therefore welcome the audit opportunity to return for a full committee as a whole meeting with a greater amount of time, as we have done with Grey Highlands, to take a deeper dive into both the challenges and the solutions. We are here today to urge Council to commit to the creation of a county-wide stormwater master plan that goes beyond compliance, prioritizes prevention over reaction, applies best-in-class practices, and treats stormwater as a critical asset, not a liability. The decision made at this table will shape Grey County's resilience for decades to come. And the question for Council is not whether Grey County can afford to do this. It is whether we can afford not to. Thank you for your time and consideration. I now hand this over to Andrew McCammon and Jack Imhoff, who will give greater detail in both policy and techniques. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Could somebody confirm that my screen is, I'm sharing my screen because I'm trying to.
Okay,
Is
so
my screen
Mr.
up?
Mr. McCammon, at the moment, we can just see, we can see your name, but your video's not turned on. We're not seeing the shared slides at this point in time.
There we go.
There, yeah, that's looking, there we go. So we've got your full screen and you might want to
One of
move.
two?
Yes, yeah, so you might want to move that Zoom one out of the way. There you go. Maybe try going to view slide deck instead so that we can see it in greater size instead of your ribbon up across the top. That might help.
Oh, I'm technologically incompetent, so I'm afraid I'm happy that I have sent you a PDF. It hopefully will be in your agenda package and there's no changes.
We do, and yes, so you're welcome. Whatever makes you comfortable, go ahead and keep using this view.
Thank you so very much. And thank Council for allowing us this opportunity today. The Ontario Headwaters Institute is a registered charity, and our mission in our letters patent with the Canada Revenue Agency are that we promote watershed security, healthy and resilient watersheds that protect regional ecological integrity, social well-being, and economic vitality. Oh, I am just so bad at this. I won't read my slides. The first comment I want to make is the inserts of Grey County's visuals into the national anthem video was highly water-centric. And I think that speaks very highly to what I know of Grey County and its residents, where people really care about water. So we've been working as a threesome for 9 months in response to a number of site-specific issues, where we are seeing that, unfortunately, in spite of what Brad talked about with the town of Blue Mountains establishing a stormwater management master planning process, that some councils don't understand the difference in the terminology, and that a site-specific stormwater management plan is just that. And you can't appeal to common county-wide or municipal-wide standards without a consistent stormwater management master plan. It's been a fascinating odyssey to speak to some councillors who just don't understand the difference. So we think that there's a huge role for the county to step into that void and ensure that all of the water regionally has the same high level standards. A master plan would treat local development applications evenly, set minimum standards for site-specific plans, avoid inconsistencies between costs borne by a developer and costs borne by the taxpayer. And by that, I'm referring to what Brad mentioned, in that when poor management, stormwater management is implemented, you can wash out the footings for a bridge downstream, and then the taxpayers get to pick up the costs for restoring those footings. and it would reduce the negative downstream impact on a full watershed basis. So that's why we see it's been a real odyssey to go through Grey County and see the variances. And clearly, from our perspective, there's a need for a stormwater management master plan. The good news here is that, yes, while it will be a short-term expense, there's a really long-term gain. And that is the fact that the provincial planning statement actually requires planning authorities, such as municipalities, to protect, improve, and restore the quantity and quality of water by using the watershed as the ecologically meaningful scale for planning. You can't do stormwater on a site, you can do it on a site-specific basis, but you really have to look downstream and take a holistic approach. The secondary aspect of this also in the PPS is that municipalities are obligated to minimize the potential negative impacts of planning on water. So it's quite clear that it would help with your planning. It would ensure a consistent platform for proposals and ensure the residents who love the visual images in the O Canada summary to protect that going forward for future generations. That's my time. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you very much to both of you. And I'll now look to Mr. Imhoff if you'd like to add to the delegation.
Thank you, Madam Warden and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity for all three of us to speak to you about the critical need for a cohesive stormwater management master plan for the county. My name is Jack Imhoff, and I am an aquatic ecologist and watershed scientist. First, for many years with the Ministry of Natural Resources, and then as the Director of Conservation Ecology for Freshwater Conservation Canada, a national NGO. Over my more than 50 years as an ecologist, I've spent a great deal of time in Grey County, as well as throughout Ontario and across Canada. It seems to me that often those that live in an area don't often have a full appreciation of how special their area can be. It's home and familiar. Sometimes we need to go elsewhere in Canada and the world to see how special our land and waters are. I'm here to tell you what you have is special, unusual, and extremely sensitive to change, as well as sensitive to poor planning and design, whether from forestry, agriculture, or development. I often see your slogan. As a matter of fact, my wife and I were driving around the other day up in lovely Grey County looking for snowy owls and a few other odds and sods. And I noticed your sign saying, "Color it your way." And I'm here to urge you all to color it blue for water. Within Grey County, you have the last remaining high-quality water and watersheds found in southern Ontario. Largely, this is due to your local geology, which acts as like a sponge, holding, cleansing, and releasing clean water through the land into your wetlands and streams, and ultimately to the lake and often to your taps. These watersheds have in the past provided food, water for people and animals and crops, as well as healthy, robust environments for people, whether they live, hike, fish, hunt, or just enjoy this special county, as I have. As my colleagues Brad and Andrew have stated, this quality can go up in smoke through incremental, one-off land use development and change, especially in sensitive headwater areas, which, once damaged, can translate that damage all the way down the system and ultimately to the lakes. I've spent my career working to develop better understandings of our watersheds, developing tools, technologies, and design protocols with fellow professionals in the engineering, hydrology, hydrogeology, and planning fields. I was also an adjunct at the University of Guelph in the School of Environmental Design and Rural Development. My purpose in this work is to ensure sound development for people, while not creating a legacy of degradation, damage, and long-term cost to all of you, as Brad and Andrew have mentioned. We do know better. We simply seem to have forgotten. The land and waters are our most precious resources, and we need to plan far better to guide development that provides opportunities without massive long-term costs. And this is why the county and its collective municipalities need to create a cohesive stormwater management master planning process, perhaps targeting, first of all, for high growth areas, such as Markdale, Meaford, Thornbury, and so on. This would create uniform approaches, standards, and designs and reduce the individual costs and variability of multiple municipal master plans. By coordinating this with your member municipalities, you would both expedite sound development, ensure protection for the needs of both agriculture and new residents, while maintaining these healthy lands and waters and saving money now and in the future. And to stress what Brad and Andrew said, we need to go beyond the minimum standards, which ultimately end in minimal environments. MECP's own documents urge us to go beyond the minimum, and I urge you to manage for excellence rather than mediocrity by supporting and coordinating a master plan for all your growth municipalities. Shared costs will provide cost savings and shared healthy lands and waters. And I really want to thank you all for the time and your consideration on this matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the three of you. I'm going to now put it out to see if there are any questions for clarification from any of our council members. Looking around the room, I'm not seeing any hands raised here, just confirming online, nor online. Okay, thank you. We very much appreciate all three of your inputs to be able to put together this delegation for us for our contemplation. And thank you very much for circulating the slide deck as well. Very helpful to see those additional details that are built into that. So we appreciate the time that you've had with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, then we are going to move on to our consent agenda. We actually have 10 items on the consent agenda. So I'll ask if there are any that any committee of the whole member wishes to pull, and then that way we'll arrange for it towards the end of the agenda. We'll go to Councillor Greig.
Item 6A, the correspondence from the city of Peterborough, please.
Okay, thank you. That's 6A. Anything else? Councillor Nielsen?
6I, please.
6I as an ice cream. And looking online, looking around the table, not seeing anything further. Okay, all right. So we will contemplate those two matters separately. So with that, then it is recommended that the following consent agenda items be received and that staff be authorized to take the actions necessary to give effect to the recommendations in the staff reports, and that the correspondence be supported or received for information as recommended in the consent agenda. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Pringle, seconded by Councillor Carlton. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Okay, that allows us to move on to our items for separate discussion. We're looking at item 7A, and Madam Clerk is making her way to the lectern to introduce that, but let me get it on the floor before we enter into discussion. It's recommended that CCR-CW 0126 regarding a draft updated council compensation bylaw be received, and that council compensation bylaw as presented be brought forward to County Council in the form substantially attached hereto for consideration. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Got it moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by Councillor Eccles. It's now on the floor for discussion. Welcome to the lectern, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Good morning, County Council. Through you, Madam Warden, this proposed bylaw here today is the first of a series of updated policies the Clerk's Department plans to bring forward this year prior to the end of the council term. So the current bylaw in place that governs council's pay and expense and reimbursements is bylaw 470210, and it requires some updating given its age. Rest assured just that your pay is being done consistently and by the same people each month. So it is accurate, but the policy itself does need some cleaning up. So we just thought we'd bring this forward prior to the end of the term. So there is a proposed bylaw attached to the back of the report, and the changes and highlights are summarized in the report, but I'll just go through some of them of note here right now. The first one is just simply updating the per diem and salaries for both warden and councillor to 2026 rates, and then removing the prior increases, the reference increases being made by CPI. We've swapped that out to reflect cost of living adjustments instead of the previous practice to increase based on CPI. There is also a specification of what salary payment actually does cover, which is being the attendance at and preparation for regular and special community council meetings and social and community functions. A new section in the updated proposed bylaw is clarification that if there's a subcommittee or task force meeting that happens on the same day as county council, that councillors are still eligible for a separate per diem. Your council meetings you're paid by salary for those. So if you attend any subcommittee or task force meetings, you're eligible for a per diem. So that's just clarifying what could have been in the past an inconsistent practice where you are eligible for that per diem despite being at county council the same day. There's also a proposed amendment that will note that if you attend a meeting for less than 30 minutes, no per diem is paid. The current bylaw says that if you're in attendance for half the time of the total meeting length, you're not paid that per diem. So that's just making more of a clean threshold of 30 minutes. There's the incorporation of the $50 technology allowance into the bylaw. That's just consolidating a current policy position into this bylaw as well. And then a new section noting that councillors are eligible to be reimbursed for expenses that are reasonable in your out-of-pocket expenses you incur while conducting county business. So where you will likely see this most of the time is on your conference travel days, where you're not necessarily eligible for a meal per diem, but you can submit expenses for reimbursement. And then a new process section at the end of the bylaw, which in the report, it has a bit of an error here. So it's a new section that outlines that receipts must be submitted within 60 calendar days, but cannot be submitted past December 31st of any year is what that reference should say in the report. So this is just to assist with accuracy of pay and making sure that we're paying all expenses within the year, and it helps with budget and reconciling numbers at the end of the year. And come 2027, non-union staff and council compensation will be reviewed again as part of it's a 5-year cycle. So that's anticipated to take place next year. And if council has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll look around the room. And I've got a couple of hands here. So we'll begin with Councillor Greig and then we'll go to the Deputy Warden.
Thanks, Tara, for the report this morning. The first question is, if you could expand a little bit more on the subcommittee meeting or advisory committee meeting for less than 30 minutes, no per diem will be paid. I potentially see that as a little bit problematic because preparation for a meeting I think is an oversight there. I think the older language, I mean, if it's a meeting that was not longer than 30 minutes and someone is only there for 15 minutes, that doesn't sound to me like they had a lot of intention to attend the meeting. I'm more comfortable, I think, with the older language as opposed to the new language, not allowing for any remuneration because it dismisses the amount of time spent preparing for the meeting. That's a concern of mine. Second concern is, and I spoke to this in the past, this is another opportunity just for me to speak to it. I am opposed to the county including formal language to pay for alternate county councillors to attend. If the alternates want to be remunerated by their lower tier municipalities to attend, that's fine. However, I don't think the county should be facilitating or condoning an environment. We just recently had an in-depth discussion regarding a new 128 bed build at Grey Gables, and having paying alternate counselors to attend and participate in that debate that day without having the institutional background and informed insights into what the ramifications of such a decision could have. I don't think the county should be facilitating formally remunerating at this end for those individuals to participate. So First is a question. Second, I would be opposed to the alternate language.
Thank you. And with regards to your question, I'd certainly, we'd take council's direction on what your preference is, whether it's to introduce this new 30-minute threshold or to keep the remaining or something different. My thinking in changing it was that for meetings that are longer in length, say if you had a 3 or 4 hour committee meeting and a councillor was attending for, say they were there for an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes, that there's perhaps the way the current policy is written is that they wouldn't receive a per diem, or there'd be a deduction. So the thinking was that's still a somewhat significant amount of time and is worth consideration of a per diem payment, but I'm happy to adjust that with council's direction as you see fit.
Okay, thank you. We'll carry on with the discussion then. We'll look to the deputy warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And this kind of discussion is always fraught with danger for the elected official, but here we are and here we go. My question is, and concern somewhat, is the definition of meeting per diems regarding full day or half day. The following paragraph says that the per diems shall be payable for preparation, attendance, so on and so forth. Does the half day or full day definition consider travel time? Some counselors, the drive is an hour. Sometimes the counselors, depending on where they're from, can take 10 minutes. 6 minutes, sorry. 18 minutes. In any case, so if the half day, for instance, the meeting is less than 6 hours. So if the meeting is 5.5 hours, and it takes an hour to get here, an hour to get home, now we're up to 7.5 hours. Really? Half day? I'm thinking that's more like a full day. Knowing full well that there's going to be others that consider that a half day. I get that. Lots of days I have half days that are many hours as well, but if you could just maybe clarify a little more on that one, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll certainly take a stab at it. The full day and half day, I can't speak to the rationale for why those lengths of meeting times were originally put in. This is a carryover from the current bylaw. It's something that we didn't necessarily propose to change, but I do acknowledge that that is perhaps a little bit long, but it does not incorporate travel time, just for clarification. So if council would like to see the half day, that threshold changed to 4 hours or 5 or something different, then staff will happily take that direction based on what your experience is as attendees of these meetings.
Okay, well, I'll put it out for any further discussion. We'll go to Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Matrosoff. Just one question I have in terms of the timeline on review of the remuneration. County Council has the same timeline as municipal elections, and it always seems to be, to the Deputy Warden's comments, a difficult conversation to have when you're sitting as the elected official talking about your own pay. Whereas reviewing remuneration prior to the election so that the incoming members of Grey County Council or even our lower tier municipalities are understanding the remuneration itself, but also are not involved in talking about our own pay. So I'm just wondering if the conversation about why we're not going to review till 2027, which will be after the next municipal election.
And the proposed date to review the actual salaries is 2027, just because that's the schedule that was established during the last review of non-union, and council was done alongside that review as well. So that's just keeping on that same schedule, which, sorry, Jen, is it 4 years? 5 years, sorry, which is that. Oh, sorry. I'll defer that to Jen.
I saw Director Moreau had raised her hand earlier, so I wanted to make sure she had a chance to address it as well.
Through you, Madam Warden, we performed the last non-union and council remuneration with our third-party expert, Gallagher and Associates. We did that as quickly after the pandemic as we could, but that aligned to 2023. We did the review, and in 2024, council elected to add that to the budget. If council would like to change that cycle and bump it up a year, because we do it together, we would bump that up quickly, so you would consider it in the next year before you are no longer perhaps council members before the election, for lack of better words.
Thank you very much, Ward Matchstaff, and thank you for that answer. And I do understand the convenience of cycling at the same time as we're doing other reviews. For myself, I think I'd be more comfortable if this council reviewed it for the next council. That's just my own position. I will leave it to the rest of the council to see if there's anybody else on the same page. But yeah, if we just continue as status quo, that's fine too. But it just becomes a bit more of a tangled web we weave when it comes to talking about our own pay and the way residents will respond to that.
Okay, let me just see if there are any others. Up over there, we'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Warden. Good morning. Good morning, County Council. Just to want to respond to Councillor Millen's comments in regards to the half day. Unless you're working 12-hour shifts, I don't see how 6 hours is a half day. So my typical day is 8 hours. And if I'm at a 4-hour meeting, then I can go to my other job for a half day. So I think the 6 hours should be reduced down to 4. I think that would make more sense in my mind, because when you include some traveling time, you know, if you're up to 5 or 6, your day is buggered. So in response to Councillor Gregg, I completely agree that if we're having an alternate, that's a choice of each municipality. And if we're having an alternate member, that should be compensated by the lower tier municipality and not the council. I agree that, you know, when they're only here on a very limited basis, they're not able to, you know, fully participate the way they should be in some of the major decisions that we do have to make. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Dobreen next.
Thank you. And I concur with Councillor Mackey. The language that we have at one of our lower tier municipalities is anything less than 4 hours is considered a half day. Anything more than 4 hours is a full day. And I think I agree that 6 hours, I'm not sure how many committee meetings actually go beyond that. But I think the language needs to be adjusted on that. And I don't have an objection to the alternate. I did have a question about the 30 minutes also, but I think you've clarified it in that if the meeting itself doesn't achieve quorum, you still are compensated. If the meeting goes beyond 30 minutes, but someone logs in or attends for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, clearly they knew they had a conflict, they would not be compensated for that entire meeting.
Yes, that's correct. And it's to confirm, it's the way it's proposed in the new bylaw is to attendance less than 30 minutes as long as the meeting runs longer than 30 minutes. There would be no per diem paid. That is arguably for meetings that are 45 minutes maybe will create some issues, but staff just felt we kind of had to draw a line somewhere, and 30 minutes seemed like a reasonable amount of time. It differs a little bit from the current policy, which is the 50%, but as you state, that is correct.
And just to clarify then, if you could confirm what the threshold is for determining quorum, if it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes, because now you're you're achieving, you're asking that everyone be there in order to start the meeting on time. If quorum isn't achieved within that time frame, the meeting is adjourned or canceled because it's never been called to order. It's the individual member. If you get the business done and it happens to get done in 29 minutes, they're still compensated. They've made decisions. They've addressed the agenda items. But the way I read it is that if a member isn't there for the entirety of the meeting, regardless how long it is, they would not be compensated.
I may have to get you to repeat the last part of that question. I'm not sure I fully followed, but quorum, I believe it's 15 minutes. We changed that from a very long 30 minutes that it was prior. So it's now 15 minutes that we wait until we decide whether a quorum is achieved or not. And then, sorry, if you could repeat your question.
If I remember it, I think it's that 30-minute, if the member isn't there for the meeting longer than 30 minutes, that member isn't compensated. But if the meeting only lasts 29 minutes, the members are compensated. I think there's just some clarity in the language.
You're correct. In that circumstance, there would be no per diem paid to that member, and there's perhaps an equity or fairness issue that we might need to look at further. I have to think about that a little bit more.
Okay, now I do see Councillor Gregg's hand. I'm just doing a scan to make sure that I'm going to take first comments first before we circle back to any follow-up. So we'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And it's more or less in the sense of a question with regards to the IT allowance. That has been since 2010, which is 16 years ago. And I asked that question, is that still fair? I'm not debating that. Is it still fair? And is that $50 taxable? Because if you're paying tax on $50, or if it's, you have to claim it, and that changes it from being compensated to it just being a stip on that you're just given and you're paying tax on it. That's a clear question.
Okay, I think I'm going to look to Director Morrow. I think she may have a response for that.
Through you, Madam Warden, I have half a response. I will ask our payroll coordinator and payroll manager whether or not the $50 stipend is a taxable benefit. But in regards to the IT stipend, that was part of the remuneration and was looked at by Gallagher and Associates and deemed to be acceptable at that point. We include all of the premiums, per diem, stipends, and an assessment is done when we do that remuneration survey regarding council pay.
So I think if it's taxable, I think that's a little bit of a different look, then it's just covering your cost. Because, you know, like mileage or whatever, however, but that can maybe come back. I don't know. It's just, I asked that question. Because then it's not really covering your costs. It's just giving you an extra amount of money per month, right? So which you have to pay tax on.
Okay, what we'll do is I'll keep an eye out, Director Morrow, if you have any updated information as you're questioning to staff, but I'm going to go back over to the clerk.
Thank you. And just with regard to the $50 technology allowance, it is something that I think as staff, we certainly would like your feedback on whether that amount and number is still relevant, or if it is still a relevant thing to include. It's something that we plan to be looked at in 2027 when the compensation review is done, as well with the meeting per diems, and if they are relevant as well, or if there's a case to be made for everything being a salary and all encompassing of everything. Not saying that's necessarily the case, but those are the things that we definitely would like the consultant to look at next year.
Okay, and I do see some people are looking like they may have further questions with regards to that. And what we can do is we can continue make sure that everybody's asked all the questions that they have, raised all the issues that they wish to contemplate in terms of this motion that's on the floor. If necessary, to give payroll staff a chance to come back with some fruitful answers, what we could do is we can call a break before we actually come back and finish the vote on this. So I'll just leave that out there depending on how many others wish to add to the conversation. I'm not seeing any further hands. So Councillor Greg, you had put your hand up for a second time. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And just a little further to Councillor Dobreen's comments. If I provide an example, perhaps you can provide some clarity back for me, but I'll use the Accessibility Committee, for example. If there's a lack of quorum for 8 minutes and then quorum's established, but then quorum is lost again after 20 minutes, that meeting, it no longer functions, it's over. Is the individual remunerated under the new language if such an occurrence were to happen? And then I have a subsequent motion.
Yes, in that circumstance, the member would be remunerated. The language in the proposed bylaw is that if quorum is lost partway through the meeting or it's never achieved at all, that per diem is still to be paid to the member in recognition of the preparation and the time and their plans to carry out the meeting as planned.
Okay, thank you for that. And I will make an motion that the language regarding the payment for alternate county councillors be removed from the draft bylaw in place. That's just to show that I am steadfastly opposed to such an initiative.
Okay, just before it gets on the floor, if I call for a second and there is a second, I'm just going to look to the clerk for clarity because we are contemplating the bylaw at this point in time. We have discussed and approved our budget, which includes compensation. So could you just please walk us through the process if this comes to the floor, if there are any implications in terms of the process and what it is that we're specifically considering today?
Yeah, something that comes to mind just off the bat is we do have a policy that specifically deals with alternate attendance and payment. So staff would bring that forward based on whatever was decided with regards to alternates. What I'm just not sure how to best handle is if the county does not compensate, but the lower tiers do not compensate either, then there's a bit of a gap there for the alternates and who there's to be receiving payment from. The Municipal Act allows local member municipalities to appoint an alternate to the upper tier council. It's not required, but it is something we as the upper tier we don't necessarily invite or deny, or we just accept whoever is appointed to attend the meetings. And we've been paying them for that since that was implemented in 2018. So if there's no provision for Grey County to pay their alternates, then I just would like to have probably a conversation with the local municipalities just to make sure that that their intentions are clear on what they will do if an alternate attends council.
Okay, so in that context, considering that we're just considering the bylaw at this point in time, I'll ask is there a seconder to Councillor Greg's motion? I'll just ask if second. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackey is seconding. Okay, so Councillor Mackey has seconded, so it is on the floor for discussion. And I open it up to council members then for discussion on this particular motion that has been proposed by Councillor Gray. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Board Member Staff. I'm just processing what Clerk Warder just said, which was the Municipal Act says they can, but it isn't not a requirement. My position would almost be if we're not going to compensate, then we should just say that they're not brought up, and that it's up to the member to if you can't make it, you can't make it. that we just don't accept alternates. Your argument for it is that an alternate doesn't have the background and the institutional knowledge, which I don't disagree with. There is challenges when you have a member who comes up and is trying to play catch up on 6 months of reporting. So if this motion carries, to me, it would make more sense to have a further motion just adopting the idea that Grey County Council doesn't accept alternates and that we are the council that is appointed. Because to me, that carries more to what your argument is than the remuneration.
I'm going to ask the CAO to come in. I have some thoughts in terms of what we can and can't do today in separation from the actual policy. I'm going to look to the CAO.
Thank you, Warden, and through you. Thank you for the comments and questions with respect to the alternate councillors. As Clerk Warder indicated, lower tier council members legislatively can appoint an alternate council member. It's up to the local municipal councils to appoint the alternate council member. In terms of the current bylaw that exists, and I guess the bylaw is open to further amendments subject to council's approval, but Section 6 deals with the compensation as it relates to the alternate council member per diems that are provided to those alternate councillors. So if there's based on the mover and seconder, I think again, just trying to understand in terms of what the direction would be with respect to that, it would be amending the per diem as it relates to the alternate councillor. Doesn't prevent a municipality to appoint, because legislatively that is protected under the Municipal Act. So the local councils can still appoint an alternate councillor. It's just, as Clerk Warder indicated, there will be then a gap potentially created in terms of who's paying any compensation for that alternate councillor to attend. If this gets removed, then county council wouldn't be potentially then paying that per diem. It would be up to either the local municipality to support that alternate councillor per diem, or that council member wouldn't then receive any per diem. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you for that input. And I do want to put the lens out that there is a concern that if we change tack at this point in time, midstream, midterm, and we say, okay, we're not, yes, you could still send somebody, but we're not going to pay for it now. We've done our budget process, so have lower tiers. They've done their budget process based on the fact that they don't compensate their alternates when they need to go and do put their hat on as the alternate at county. So I'm wondering, Madam Clerk, when would be the best time in place when this might be a contemplation for the next term, for the next to give fair warning to the lower tiers that if you want to send an alternate, you will need to allocate, or not need to, but it'll be up to you to decide whether or not you as a lower tier are going to compensate. We have I can think of, I sat on 2 conservation authority boards in my past term. One compensated and one didn't. So my lower tier compensated for the one that was missing. So in one case, my per diem was paid directly by the conservation authority. In the other case, it was paid by the town equally, to make sure that when I served in that role, I was being compensated equally depending on which conservation authority I was on. So this is part of a bigger picture. Madam Clerk, I'm going to look to you for just contextual guidance in terms of the process and when we look at the policy versus when we look at the bylaw the compensation, which is today's topic.
Through you, Warden, and I'll start, and if Tara has anything further to add, I'm happy to do that. With respect to the budgets, as you noted, we currently have budgeted with what we've seen in terms of alternate council compensation in the past. You're probably correct in that right now that's probably not in the local municipal council budgets, just because right now the bylaw covers per diem costs as it relates to alternate councils at the county level. So if that is a concern amongst council, I'm looking to Tara now, one option might be to, if subject to the mover and seconder, obviously, would be to whether or not this is effective today, or as per when this bylaw comes back to council for consideration, which would be the next council meeting, I'm assuming, or making it effective into 2027, which would give opportunity for the local councils to adjust their budgets. We would obviously then adjust our budgets for 2027 as it relates to that. So that's another potential option if that works procedurally, and that's where I'm going to be turning over to Tara if that works.
I think it does work. There's nothing that jumps out at me to prevent that from happening. It would, implementing a change to the alternate process would, from a staff perspective, just be probably tidier if it was done at the beginning or leading up to a new council term, and it would just give all the Grey County clerks to have a chance to talk about the policy and decide or make so that they can make the appropriate recommendations to the incoming council about whether or not an alternate needs to be appointed to attend Grey County Council. It rests with the local municipality to both appoint and to actively ask a member to attend. The county we don't involve ourselves in that at all. So it really does rely on the local municipalities to do that, and it would allow some conversation to be had to just clarify and make sure that everyone's on the same page with how that generally operates.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to look to the mover then to ask if you could define your timeline in your motion or your thoughts at this point, Councillor Gray.
Because there was language in the report speaking to 27 council review, it was my intention that it not be immediate, that it would be parallel or aligned with the new term of council at the end of the year. Secondly, in response to Councillor Nielsen, I cannot make a subsequent motion because there was discussion earlier this term of council about removing the alternate altogether. So that would require a motion to revisit a topic that had already been spoken of at this table. So this is separate from that discussion, which is why there's no potential for a subsequent motion without getting into a motion to revisit and so forth.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just ask Madam Deputy Clerk if you could just update that. Thank you. You've got that embedded into the motion. I'll look to the seconder though, because it was seconded without that.
Thank you, Madam Warden. You made some good comments, as did our CAO, and I believe to do it midstream wouldn't be the right time, but I still fully believe that compensation should be by the lower tier municipality. But it will give the lower tier municipality a good bit of notice to know what their responsibilities are going to be going forward. So I support this.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and I don't mean to add a further complication, although I may. I'm wondering about attaching a time frame to this, thinking of our own experience in Meaford last term when Mayor Klumpus was away for 5 months and Councillor Kentner filled in for that extended time frame. So thinking then 5 months gives someone adequate time to really be up to speed with the activities of county council. And at that point, then, I'm thinking could and should be paid by the county. So I'm wondering about, again, a time frame being attached to this, whether it is a number of meetings, 4 meetings, or whatever might be appropriate for the lower tier to compensate, but for an extended period of time coming back to the county.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have something in a provision for that when it goes to an extended absence of a mayor or deputy mayor from the lower tier?
I was just trying to pull it up here on the fly, and I won't probably be able to do that. But my understanding of the intention of Councillor Gregg's motion and Councillor Mackey's is these are alternates that were appointed to attend the kind of one-off absences, which there's a separate provision under the Municipal Act that speaks to those longer term absences. And I believe the intention would be that they would be compensated as per usual. And this wouldn't apply to those circumstances.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. There was some mention here that from you, Madam Clerk, that there's a separate policy on alternates. I think this should wait until you bring that policy back at the same time to see the merit of why we do have an alternate. Because it's in that report, I presume. Because we've had that discussion, right? And as far as an alternate having that ability to be brought up to speed, I don't know about you guys, but I read the reports before I came here. And if the alternate can't understand the reports, how the heck is a public person going to understand the reports? So I don't think it's complicated that that individual who's sitting in a seat from that municipality that's representing that municipality is here at the table with one equal vote around the table, who read the reports, or she read the reports, however it is. Is it, like, am I missing something? Is it not clear when you read those reports? You read the reports, you see the staff recommendation. Our reports are great. So as far as the point, I think that they're not up to speed. I think that from, even if there's in cameras, they get the information. So I sort of take that to a little bit, that I think they are well informed when those alternates are here, because the reports are here, just like us today are reading those reports. So I sort of think that we should wait and have that other policy come back at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Looking around the room for any further questions. Okay. I'm not seeing any, Madam Clerk, unless you see that it sounds like this is a viable motion then, that the fact that we're looking at the compensation separately from the actual policy. We're not going to end up finding ourselves at odds with our own policy. Any concluding comments from you?
So there is that the policy still will exist. So I think to be clear with the intention, we would work into this amending motion that the proposed bylaw be amended to remove per diem compensation for lower tier municipal alternate council members and rescind the alternate policy. So because both of those are trying to achieve the same thing. They're doing the same thing, so we should include the reference to the policy being rescinded effective at the with the beginning of the new council term. An alternative that we could add that policy to the list of ones that we bring forward for this council to review over the next few months, as well, if that's a wish.
Okay, so so it's on the clerk's advisement that this be added to the motion in order to make sure that the two don't get out of lockstep. But as Councillor Greig had noted, because we had a discussion about the existence of alternates, this is a separate issue then. This is just simply saying, no, there are still alternates according to our policy, but as of 2027, we wouldn't be providing compensation. Do I interpret that correctly, Madam Clerk? Okay, I confer that Madam Clerk is nodding her head in agreement. Okay, we'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Just to follow up, I know this was asked a few years back. What are we talking in dollars? We're spending a half an hour here today, and it's going to go back, and you got to talk to all the clerks and how much time that's going to take. What are we talking about in dollars? $1,000? Like, it's like we're talking peanuts again. We got a bigger one coming up here a little later today. Anyway, that's just no comment.
Okay, well, I will say that we rarely have alternates here because we have excellent county councilor attendance. So this is a relatively small budget line. And today we're talking about the compensation. So today we're talking about the line and what it costs, not the existence or the viability of having an alternate. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I just want to make the point that it's my understanding that when we come to county council, we wear a different hat. And it does not make sense to me that we can expect people to come to county council and vote on lines that are the county is supreme. We leave behind our local municipality. But at the same time, we're going to expect the local municipality to fund their own representation. I'm just not getting a clear view of the sense of this motion. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you. I don't see any further hands. Oh, we'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you, and I'd like to speak to the additional clause, if that is appropriate. I'm not clear on why we would rescind a policy. Then we wouldn't have the policy at the beginning of the term to allow for them. Does the policy outlines more than just compensation? Would it not be beneficial to update the policy to reflect, if this passes, that to reflect the payment of compensation to be in the hands of the lower tier, as opposed to wiping out the policy altogether?
We're going to go to the CAO.
Thank you for that question. And as we've been having this conversation, I've pulled up the alternate member policy just to refresh my memory of what is, and it does contain some further provisions outside of compensation that we probably would want to maintain if, again, legislatively municipal members could appoint alternate members. And so we want to still have voting provisions, orientation provisions, meeting preparation, things like that. There is a compensation section, so we probably would be, I'm assuming, updating and that policy versus rescinding. But again, I'm looking to Clerk Warder in terms of what that, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so Madam Clerk, do you want to just respond to that? And perhaps it needs a further refined language on what would be rescinded or updated. And then I did see a hand over here, so we'll go to another county council member afterwards.
Thank you. We certainly could approach it in that way. I don't personally have concerns with the alternate policy being rescinded as a whole, because the compensation piece is really the big part of that. A lot of the things in that policy we would just do anyways. And the municipal act is really the authority that allows them to come here. So repealing the policy wouldn't preclude that from happening, but we would have to bring an amended one back just for clarity, but it wouldn't have to be done necessarily with any urgency. And it would reflect whatever is decided by council in terms of compensation and structure and things like that.
I wonder then if the wording instead of rescinded might be better aligned with the aligned with the bylaw at the new council term, because I'm recognizing what you're saying, but at the same time, we always have to make sure a motion is standalone and people understand it the way that it's written. So if somebody were to read it the way that it sounds, if this passes, it is not eliminating the alternates, because as you said, there's a municipal act, but it could be read that way. So I just want to make sure that we're with absolute clarity on it. So Madam Clerk, is that just, am I just picking a word that doesn't work in your clerical language?
No, that is good. Thank you.
Okay, I believe there's a hand over here. We're going to go to Councillor Eccles.
I'm in agreement with Councillor McQueen over there. It's a long time over a very minute spot. I don't even like the alternate policy be aligned. I don't think it even should be in there. And although it's up to the mover and seconder if they want that added in, because in my mind, this is kind of stating that we're in agreement with what it is, and I'm not. If we're sending an alternate here to participate in county council, they should be paid by county council. They're doing the work of county council. And yes, I have used an alternate a couple of times in this term of council, but I've sat and talked to that individual for an hour, 2 days before, after he's read the package. And is there anything that you need to be updated on, anything to get here? The preparation should lie on the individual that's being replaced or represented by that alternate. And then they can make a good vote. I just wish we would have voted maybe when the other member of Owen Sound had gone out to the washroom a few minutes ago, and we probably would have got this passed by now. But anyways, they didn't have an alternate, so we waited till he come back. Thank you.
Okay, well, we will refrain from comments about personal matters. Thank you. Okay, is there anything further then? I'm looking at the mover. I'm not seeing an objection to the last line, but it is your motion. So if you wish to move it the way it was originally, it will be up to you. I'm just trying to make sure there's clarity so that anyone who's looking at it can understand the implications.
I was happy the way it was originally. Because I'm concerned this now circles back to what I was saying. I cannot move a motion that this is now rediscussing something that this council discussed earlier this term of council. It's not a separate matter and it needs a separate motion to revisit. So I don't think it should be there. That being said, I'm not the professional that the clerk is. So if she feels it's requisite and has to be there, then I'll defer to her expertise. Personally, I don't think it needs to be included. And it might be in contravention to the earlier conversations that we had at this table.
Okay, well, it's not in contravention to the discussion on whether or not there should or shouldn't be alternates. So, but Madam Clerk, if the mover has spoken, that was not his intent to have that last line there. If it's taken out and then we realize that we're not aligned somewhere in terms of policy and bylaws, then I guess then it would be left to you then to bring it forward and say, we now need to change this document to make sure that this document matches it. Is it fair enough to leave it open to your process?
Yes, that's my concern, is that just if the bylaw and the conversation is intended to remove the compensation for the alternates, that we still have that policy in effect. But given the bylaw change, it is something that we could just bring forward and just note to council that the policies now or aspects of the policy related to the compensation are have been addressed by council. They're redundant and it does need to be changed, and would seek their support at that time to do that. So that is an alternative way we could go if that third clause is not, the second clause isn't ideal from the mover and sector's perspective.
Okay, well, having heard that and making sure that we're not going to put ourselves in a rock and a hard place, and that the clerk will be able to navigate us out of that if that's where we find ourselves. Having listened to the mover who has reaffirmed his intention the way he originally moved it without the extra line, then I will respond to that and say that we should strike that off and we should just keep it there. We did clarify the timing, which I think is an important part of it, because the mover did actually articulate that was his intent. So with that, I don't see any further hands. I'm going to ask for the vote at this point in time. All those in favor? Okay, and that motion fails. Okay, thank you very much. What we'll do at this point in time is we're going to call a break. When we come back, we will work efficiently through, because we have a number of items on discussion before we get to closed session as well. Oh, sorry. Thank you. We're back to the original motion. Then we're going to do a break. Then we're going to come back efficiently and deal with the other 5 items that are on for discussion before we go into closed session. So, Madam Clerk, then we're back to the original motion. Is there anything further? Yes, Director Maurer has a bit of an update on some of the questions that were asked on the original motion.
Through you, Madam Warden, I did want to confirm that the $50 flat fee allowance for tech is a taxable benefit, so it's taxed as income. I did have an opportunity to go back to the Gallagher report that we received in 2023, and of our 10 comparators that were used for county council, 4 provided a tech allowance, 3 were flat fee like ourselves, and 1 other county provided 50% reimbursement on an actual internet bill.
Okay, thank you. And yes, Counselor Eccles.
Not to belabor this, but there was one other question, or I had a question on 4.2. Each member shall be reimbursed for the use of personal cell phone where the county device was elected and not to be used, up to a maximum permitted under the policy. So if somebody's using a personal cell phone and with all the spyware, everything else that we have, and how much we're allowing somebody to use their personal cell phone. That one just baffles me. And then the other thing is up to the maximum permitted under the policy, but I have no idea what the maximum is. It $2? Because we're given a $50 fee for technology. So it should, if that's what it is, I don't know why we're saying you can use your cell phone as well too and get paid for that, as well as $50 for an internet connection. But I think it should be, if we're going to still allow people to use their personal cell phone and connect into our servers and whatnot, the $50 should already compensate that. Am I clear on that, or? That's my point. I think we should eliminate that altogether. You don't want to use the thing, that's fine, but we're not paying you to use your own cell phone.
I'll go to Director Morrow.
Through you, Madam Warden, the maximum allowable reimbursement for bringing your own device is $35. I do note my colleague Jody McEachern isn't in the room, but I'm not sure if he's online. But I know that we have an infrastructure and security system that prevents own devices causing security issues. Otherwise, the IT department would not allow that to happen. So those members of both council and staff that choose to bring their own device, rather than having a county supplied device, are managed by our infrastructure and security through IT and deemed to be safe.
Madam Clerk?
And just further to that, there are a list of requirements that do come along with using your own phone. I believe you do need to do upgrades and have a newer phone and meet that standard to ensure that security that Director Morrow is speaking to, just for additional information. Thank you, Councillor Eccles, for those comments. And those are the exact kind of conversations that and feedback that we're hoping to hear from you on with regard to that technology allowance. And when the time comes in 2027 to review the compensation as a whole, those are the exact things that we hope to hear from you on.
Okay, so future discussion for 2027. Counselor Nielsen on the original motion.
Thank you very much, Warden Metrosoft. Just a question for clarity is, the fulsome discussion we've been having on this one, staff are bringing it back and making any changes, or do we need an actual vote and motion on the concept of a half day being 4 hours, not 6?
Madam Clerk, I think you would need direction from council. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Deputy Warden.
So I will propose an amendment to the motion to change the cutoff time, half day versus full day, to be a 4 hour period of time. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to make our full day meeting today. Yeah. Unless we really put the hammer down, we're going to make a full day meeting today.
Okay, thank you. That's been moved by the Deputy Warden, and I saw Councillor Mackey has raised his hand to second. So that is now on the floor for discussion. Let's make sure it's up on the screen. It is, everything is the same except for the hours, the cutoff hours from 6 to 4. Any discussion? Councillor McQueen.
Only reason I'm bringing this up as clarity is, I think it was maybe Councillor Millen said about you could have an hour driver or 6 minutes or 18 minutes. But if you had a meeting at 10 and you left at 9 and it went to 12:30, and there's like an hour there and an hour back, like where does that all fall in? Just looking for clarity. Because it was brought up, that's all.
Okay, I'll look to the clerk, but also Counselor Dobreen has a comment.
Through you, to the question, I don't think travel time factors into this. We get compensated mileage for, the travel. We don't necessarily get travel time to conferences unless it's greater than a certain period of time. I do agree and support the less than 4 hour threshold, 4 hour threshold, so that we're here for 3 hours, 59 minutes, 2 hours, you're going to be paid the half day. For someone who travels 50, 55 minutes more, depending on the weather, maybe more, I do not anticipate being compensated for that. Because we have the option of participating virtually.
Okay, thank you. Follow up from Counselor McQueen.
I don't disagree. All I'm saying is if we start at 10, we're done at 12:30 here, that's a half a day. But wait a minute, I'm talking about 10, 11, 12, 12:30 is 2.5 hours. That's a half a day. All I'm saying, I know Councillor Millen said it might be a full day. All I'm saying, that's fine. It just, anyway.
Okay, we have a follow-up from Counselor Dobreen, and then I'm gonna look to the clerk if there's anything that she needs to add to this, and then we should contemplate voting on this motion unless there is something new that needs to be added to the table. Counselor Dobreen.
Not to belabor it, but we don't get paid per diems to be here at County Council. That's included in our stipend.
Okay. Okay, Counselor McLean, I don't want you speaking without the microphone because for the benefit of all those who are hearing, if I can have a concluding comment, because we really do need to just contemplate the whole motion that's on the floor. This has been one part of it. Everybody is free to add their thoughts on it. There is no right or wrong ability to be able to do so. So I'll accept that, but I can't have us go back and forth. So Councillor McLean, anything? No? Okay, all right. So he has declined to finish that thought. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so Madam Clerk, I'm ready to call the question unless you have anything else. Okay, so I'll call the question then on the motion that's on the floor. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And I see that moved unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. At this point in time, we will do a break until 1:45. Oh. Sorry, that was an amendment to the main motion. Thank you. Okay, so that one was the amendment to the main motion to switch from the 6 hours down to the 4 hours has been passed. We're now back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? All right, not seeing any hands. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we're going to do a break still to 1:45 because we have 5 more items for discussion before we even get to closed session. So let's see each other back at our seats at 11:45. Thank you. Okay, we have the go-ahead from technology that we are ready to proceed. We have we have taken our break, we are back, and we are looking at item 7B. We do have a quorum sitting at council here. And we have our online participants as well, ready to go. So the next one is item 7B, and it's recommended that report CCR CW 0226 regarding an update to the fees and service charges as bylaw be received, and that the proposed updates to the fees and charges schedule be supported as presented, and staff prepare a bylaw to amend bylaw 509020 being fees and charges, fees and service charges bylaw for council consideration. May I please ask for a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Mackey, seconded by Councillor Carlton. It's now on the floor, and welcome to the lectern, Manager Reid.
Thank you. Through the warden. Good morning, County Council. Another bylaw proposal to be changed, to be considered. This time we're looking at our fees and services bylaw. Our current bylaw was enacted in 2020, and it was further amended in 2024, and staff are proposing to make further amendments in 2026. Currently, the structure of our bylaw is that our fees increase automatically every year based on the previous year's Ontario CPI, September to September. That automatically gets built in, and we roll forward our fees right away. We always send out a call to the SMT team whether they believe the fees should continue with that or whether we need to revisit this bylaw. And it was decided this year that there are some fees that we want to reconsider in different from the inflationary increase, which for 2026 would be a 2.03% increase to all of our fees. The goal of these changes is to increase our fees where our costs have increased by far more than 2.03%. Also adding new fees where we're looking to add new services, as well as just improve clarity within the bylaw, both for staff that are administering these fees, but then also for the public. So in the attachment to the report, we put the schedule to the bylaw that outlines all of our fees. Anything in black would be the fees that are just using the 2.03% inflationary increase, and then we do a little bit of rounding so that we're still using whole numbers where possible. Is the numbers that are just being rolled forward automatically. Anything in red with a strike through are items that we're proposing to change. And I will note there are some fees that we don't increase with this bylaw, just because it really makes sense to keep them in nice whole dollars. For example, we collect coin laundry in our housing buildings. It wouldn't make sense to increase it from $2 to $2.05, and then we have to start worrying about giving change or all of our tenants now coming in with nickels as well. So I will move to where the changes start. The first change is within paramedics. Oops. There we go. The first item that we're looking to do is to remove the line for the public access defibrillator program. Sorry, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing? Perfect. We're looking to remove the public access defibrillator program. This program will still run, but just improving clarity. So the two components here are training, which would be captured in the line above, where we have a licensed trainer that goes out and does CPR or pad training. That would be captured in line 1. The other aspect of this program is the actual pad supplies, so batteries and the actual, sorry, I'm using the acronym, public access defibrillator pad, but the actual pads that go on those machines are the other supplies. Those get funded by the county through our own budgets and through that program. There's no cost to the users of this group. So looking to clarify that. The other item we're looking to change is the cost recovery that we record when paramedics are sent to private events. So our current bylaw states that it would be just a cost recovery. This is a bit of an administrative nightmare because the cost recovery is dependent on each event's circumstance as far as who we're sending to those events. So if it's a part-time paramedic or a full-time paramedic, there might be a slightly different cost. If that paramedic has worked all their hours and we need to bring them in at overtime, there's going to be a different cost. Or if it's a night event and there's incurring a shift premium, monitoring that and trying to figure out all those costs is quite difficult. So we're proposing to just set it at $200, and then it'll increase with inflation every year. And we believe that $200 is enough to cover off the 2 paramedics that'll be at the event, as well as a recovery for the equipment and supplies that they're using while they're there. Next up at housing, past it. Housing, we're just looking to increase our lock change fee by quite a bit more than inflation. The cost to bring someone in to change these locks has gone up significantly, so we're just looking to recover our cost when we have to do this. Next up is Grey Roots, where the majority of the changes have happened. So thank you to Savannah, Jill, and their team for their help with this. But really, we're looking to change these fees in order to modernize operations as well as strengthen the sustainability of Grey Roots. The fees we're looking at changing, the first would be to delete the copies fee. We are no longer doing copies at Grey Roots. We have a scanner that can provide high quality digital images, and if someone wanted a physical copy, it would get sent to a local company, but that would be the responsibility of the person that wants the physical copy. We would just be giving a scan back to them. The next is to add a fee into the bylaw for a theater technician. We've made some upgrades to the theater at Grey Roots, and the tech within the room is a bit complex. So we're looking that if you're booking that room, you also have the option now to book a technician with that room to help you with all the AV side. And the $50 proposed here, we believe would be enough to bring in a local technician. We would have a list of local vendors that we would use, and then it would also cover any administrative costs that the county are incurring to set up these fees or to set up this service. Next up, we're looking at changing a lot of the admissions lines to Grey Roots. These fees are ones that we have not increased with inflation, again, keeping them to a nice full round number. So they've been the same since 2020. So staff have done kind of a look at what other museums are charging, as well as other local attractions, and come up with a proposed fee. The idea is also ensuring that Grey Roots stays accessible and you're not pricing out users where necessary, while also making sure that we are bringing in reasonable revenue. It's quite a large museum and building with quite high cost to maintain, so we want to make sure that we are recovering where we can. Then in the kids programs, looking to delete the option to have a 4-week option. Staff are no longer doing this program, as well as then add in a fee for special event weeks, where again, the county will put on specialty programming such as cooking, arts, and we're incurring additional costs with it. So we're looking to recover those costs if we're offering those deluxe program offerings. And then lastly, just looking at changing the definition of a child to 4 to 12 years. This means that children 3 and under would be free at Grey Roots, and this is to align with other definitions from local upper tier municipalities and their museums. Next is planning. No number changes here, but Scott thought we should be adding some better narrative to make sure things are clear, specifically around when refunds are applicable with our planning fees. Again, just to help our staff in administering this policy, but then also improve the clarity to the public. Lastly, would be changes to the Economic Development Department, specifically within the Sydenham campus. The first would be to start offering a single desk suite to members of the public. Currently, you can rent a desk, but it's in an open space. This would offer you an opportunity to close the door as well. And we're looking at adding daily fees and weekly fees. But if we were to get into anything longer than that, we'd probably be looking at leasing, and it would be captured under the square footage components of our fees and services. And then looking at adding an offering for gym rentals. Currently, you can't rent for half a day. So just looking to add that option based on the demand that we're hearing. For the financial and resource implications, these changes were not factored into the 2026 budget, partially due to timing, but also due to, if I go back to my first year, microeconomics, if you increase the fee of something, you often don't just increase the revenues by the percentage that you increase that fee by, because sometimes you'll see less demand on that service if you increase the supply. So finance and budget managers will continue to monitor their actuals based on these updated fees if they're supported, and put those updates into the 2027 budget. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Manager Reed, for breaking that down for us. We'll begin with Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Microsoft. Just one quick question on the paramedic fee, the $200 flat fee. Is there a timeline associated with that? So it's for events, but I'm thinking if you're having a festival event where paramedic is coming out for 6 to 8 hours versus kind of similar to the conversation we just had versus a 2-hour event, like something different. I'm just wondering if there's a portion of that fee that calculates the time.
Through the warden, that 200 is an hourly charge. We typically have a minimum of 3 hours plus 1 hour for setup. So at minimum, you're paying for 4 hours, whether that's a half day or a full day, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Daubrey.
Thank you. I have just one follow-up to that question was you answered it was per hour and there's 2 paramedics sent to these events. It's not $200 per paramedic per hour. It's $200 per hour for both. Thank you. That was a nod, yes. The question that I have is with regard to the planning section. I note that we talk about if a full application is withdrawn before or after circulation. Are we also considering dormancy? We're looking at that at our lower tier in files that have no activity over a period of time and whether or not that application is deemed dormant and we no longer will maintain it or manage it. I just wondered if there was any consideration being given to that.
Okay, we'll look to Director Taylor for that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Through you, Madam Warden. It's not something that's being considered in this bylaw review. Certainly, we've been in discussions with Southgate staff on their process, and they've recently adopted their official plan amendment there. We have been looking into some legal aspects of that a little further, so it's something that might find its way into a future fees and services bylaw update, but it's not being considered at this time. At the county level, we do certainly have some files that are long dormant. We reach out to applicants to try to understand what the hiccups might be in moving forward, or whether they're still looking to move forward, or maybe they're looking to withdraw. It's not a big part of what we do. It doesn't contribute a lot of time. Generally speaking, we have less file volume at the county than the municipalities, but the files we do have might be more labor intensive. So rather than all the consents and minor variances and zoning amendments, we have subdivisions which take a long time per subdivision, but we don't have a ton of subdivisions. So it's maybe not as labor intensive at the county level, but certainly something we can monitor going forward.
Okay, and we'll go to Councillor Craig.
There. Thank you. And through you, Warden, 2 questions. The first on paramedics, it did say the language to remove the line is to reduce confusion, but then it says we currently do CPR training for organizations. Is the CPR training specific to the defibrillator program, or do we do CPR training in a broader sense?
Through the warden, we do offer CPR training outside of the PAD program for local fire departments, companies that are looking to improve health and safety. And the reason that I'm saying we're deleting that line to improve clarity is all of that would be captured under the training line, which comes above, and it's also done at a cost recovery basis.
So our paramedic services being funded 50-50 from the province, is this a cost recovery on the gross cost to the organization or the net cost after the provincial contribution? And then subsequently, I guess my question is, should we even be involved in that business? Is there opportunities for external organizations to be doing that work because paramedic services continues to escalate significantly as a service cost?
So first question towards the 50-50 funding, it doesn't factor into the 50-50 funding calculation. It's a in and out. So if we're spending $10,000 in paying the trainers and the textbooks and certification costs, then we bill that back and it does not hit the calculation. So it doesn't hit your gross expenditure line, which is what the grant's calculated on. As far as the resources, so although the individual that we currently contract to do the training for CPR is a Grey County paramedic, they are also licensed with Canadian Red Cross, and it's done outside of their working hours. So they come in and do it as a third-party contractor on their days off. They bill us the costs for their time, as well as any supplies they've used, and then we bill that back to the recipient of the training.
Okay, thanks for that. That makes me secure that there's no exposure for additional escalating overtime costs and so forth and pressures on the staffing. Second question is, a couple of years ago through, I think is the NRP program, that's who funded the electric recharging stations. It was answered that those would have a mechanism to collect for usage by the public, by any members beyond staff vehicles. Do they have that? And should that be in the fees and charges? Because I don't see that.
There we go. I'll remember how to press the microphone button eventually. Good morning, members of council, and through you, Madam Warden. So we've begun the installation of those units. At this point in time, they are locked down to corporate use only. There is the potential in the future for us to open them up, and that would require charging. Probably would defer to the Flow, who are the operators of the site for that charging. But those conversations haven't been happened at this point in time. We've come back before council.
Okay, looking around the room, any further questions? Not seeing any online as well. Looks like we've answered all the questions. So it has been moved and seconded. We've had good discussion on it. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, Manager Reid. And next, we're going to bring item C7C forward. It's recommended that report CSR CW 0926 be received and that the Child Care Mitigation Reserve Fund be utilized to offset any 2026 funding shortfall that exists at the year end in the early learning and childcare operating budget. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Got a move by Councillor Nielsen, seconded by Councillor Dickard. It's now on the floor for discussion. Welcome, Manager Cockrell. You have the floor.
Got it flashed on. My apologies. Good morning, Council. We're here to provide an overview of our 2026 early learning and childcare funding changes, impacts of service delivery and associated financial risks. I would like to clarify that we received our guidelines after we were well into budget procedures for 2026. So that's why we're providing an update after budget discussions happened. In the report, you'll see a variety of the required services that we do provide. And a new provincial agreement is anticipated in 2027, which might require further budget discussions. For an overview, in our CVOLT cost-based funding, the 2026 allocation increased to $22.7 million with a county contribution of $677. This increase, we also received a correlating increase in eligible spaces to enroll in the CVOLT system, which has brought on 105 additional licensed childcare spaces, which are currently operational already in 2026. So we moved very quickly to implement that. Parent fees for children under 6 remain capped at $22 a day. And again, we will anticipate some additional revisions to that with the 2026 agreement between the province and the federal government. Local priorities funding saw an increase to the workforce compensation small waterworks funding and a decrease to the flexibility funding, resulting in a net loss of $131,490. This was offset by our ability to reduce our anticipated fee subsidy expenditures. The enrollment of those non-CVOLT participating programs will reduce those fee subsidy costs because of that $22 max. So we anticipate that will offset itself naturally. We will continue to monitor the expenditures, and mitigation funding remains available if required. Our early on funding was reduced by $132,000 in 2026, reversing the one-time increase we saw at the end of 2025. Early on funding has not been regularly indexed, creating ongoing pressures, particularly for third-party providers. Savings of approximately $90,000 were by discontinuing, an agreement for a position that is no longer considered core funding within the early on guidelines from the province. At this time, there are no core early on services reductions anticipated for 2026, but without provincial funding adjustments in 2027, there will likely be some service impacts that we will need to bring to council. New funding streams in 2026 include the ECE Promotional Fund to support workforce awareness and entry into the profession, and an innovation fund to support recruitment, retention, and inclusive childcare strategies. And we have a report coming to council in the future to outline what those will look like in Grey County. So overall, the financial impact is $1,490, and we anticipate that we will be able to cover this with childcare mitigation reserve funding. We would like to point out that in the chart in the report, there is an error. I can't remember which column it's in, my apologies. That we will provide an update to in the final version of the report. And but the overall impact of $1,490 is correct. So again, at this time, we don't anticipate any service reductions. We have been able to bring on another 105 spaces locally, which is amazing for our families and our community. And we continue to advocate to the province for additional Seawalk spaces as we continue to see more and more interested operators coming to us in Grey County. And I will take any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. So we're going to begin with Councillor Nielsen.
I told everybody I was excited to be here. Thank you very much, Warden Matrosoft. Just a quick question on the 105 spaces in the Seawalk. My question is, are they actual new childcare spaces, or are they operators that have transitioned over into the Seawalk programming? Just because that's a difference.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Warden. They are operators that had not previously been able to opt in that we have been able to bring in. So all the current 0 to 6 spaces in Grey that are operating are in the Seawalk system.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Councillor Gregg?
Question on page 4, it states, however, staff anticipate that without adjustment to provincial early on support in 2027, service impacts may be unavoidable. Is there going to be a report that would go back through community services like during the year that would assess where we are so that we're kind of out ahead of it instead of just getting a year in review like we are kind of today?
Through you, Warden. Yes, we anticipate probably in Q3, we'll have a better idea of what our early on pressures are looking like, especially from our third-party providers and our own operational cost increases. And we'll be able to give council an idea of what that could look like from a service delivery impact as well.
Okay, further questions? Not seeing any. Looks like then we're ready to call a question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, and we are going to carry on with our agenda and looking at doing our lunch break at 12:30. So we are going to move on to item 7D at this point in time. It's recommended that report TRCW 0626 be received relating to the review of the Grey Road 17B reconstruction project scope and cost reduction, and that the transportation services continue to consult Georgian Bluffs working toward confirmation of maintenance and the multi-use trail if constructed, and that transportation services continue to finalize the design summarized as alternative 5 within the report. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Got a move by Councillor Keaveney, seconded by Councillor Dobreen. It's now on the floor, and I welcome you, Supervisor Potter, to the lectern.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Warden, Council. Through you, Warden, we prepared this presentation to accompany the opportunities for scope reduction and cost implication report for Grey Road 17B. This is our location. This portion of the highlighted in yellow is the connection effectively between Georgian Bluffs north of the Potawatomi River and the Sunset Strip or the City of Lone Sound. It's also used as a bypass to and from Highway 6. On October 29th, 2025, Council directed staff via minutes from the Budget and Finance Committee to reevaluate the project scope for opportunities to scale back what was being proposed in the 10-year capital plan and report on the change in cost. Prior to communicating the scope to Budget and Finance Committee or Council in 2025, this project had already gone through several iterations, as all of our projects do. For example, the first version focused on eliminating blind spots. Preliminary design was prepared, effectively straightening the road, which greatly improved sightlines, while being constrained by fixed points such as where we cross the river, the intersection at Alpha Street, and the intersection at Youngs Drive. This would be a significant improvement over the current road geometry. However, it would require significant earthworks at tremendous cost and negatively affect the existing driveways. The following alternatives are examples of further design philosophy and iteration via the MCEA process. And this photo or pattern pairing of photos was later found, but generally the inspiration for what we're proposing in the first place. Alternative one is do nothing. Not very often, but sometimes this is actually the answer. It doesn't make sense in our case, as the road failure and significant maintenance needs point to rehabilitation. Lacking in compliance with Cycling and Trails Master Plan and not providing facilities for safe active transportation modalities further this stance. 1A is a like for like, which sounds exactly probably what you would think it would be. But what I wanted to do is be clear on what actually is the existing condition. There is asphalt gutter and Nichols Gully, that portion of this project, that corrals runoff, whether it be rainfall or snow melt, to 17 different catch basins or inlets. I will be referring to this type of road section where gutter is on either side of the road as a semi-urban nature for the remainder of the presentation. Alternative two, oh, sorry, my apologies. This alternative was excluded from the consideration due to, again, the lacking of compliance with the Cycling and Trails Master Plan and not providing facilities for safe active transportation modalities. Alternative two. In an attempt to add cycling accommodation but refrain from the use of retaining walls, a rural section through both gully portion and the north portion, including bike lanes on either side of the road, was reviewed. The removal of the storm system is necessary to create the narrow rural cross-section that we are attempting to achieve in this state. But it creates a potential for unchecked storm or meltwater, resulting in possible failures to the gully walls on both sides of the road. This issue, in conjunction with the lack of pedestrian facilities, excludes this alternative for consideration. For your reference, we did cross sections for this, and you can kind of see what we're looking at there. There's no ability for us to catch any of the water through. This is a fill section. It doesn't really matter as much, but when you get into the cut section, when you're running through the valley, that's where the water would accumulate and possibly cause issue. Alternative three is to add bike lanes and a sidewalk. In order to combat the gully wall failure and still accommodate a sidewalk, 2 bike lanes and 2 vehicular lanes, the existing storm sewer requires revision, and retaining walls are introduced to either hold back the valley from encroaching onto the road in a cut condition or support the road platform in filled conditions. The northern section reflects a similar layout. Obviously not needing any retaining wall. This alternative is the most expensive and provides less than ideal conditions for cyclists due to being confined by gutters and Vehicular movements have a tendency to infringe on the bike lanes due to the tight horizontal geometry. If you go through there right now, you'll actually see that the center line of the road in places is missing. That's from people leaving their lane and going across. If we create a wider section, including bike lanes or paved shoulders, the same thing will happen where people start using the insides of corners rather than the center line to take the tenths of seconds or whatever it is going to be that they win out of that. So as it is the most expensive, infringing on bike lanes, the cost and unsafe conditions provided to cyclists excludes this alternative from consideration. So this is kind of what this one looks like, very similar to the last, other than you'll see that there's gutters on both sides, and retaining walls start to be required in order to hold the platform up, as we need a wider platform to accommodate these modes. Alternative 4 is the active transportation route. This alternative is very similar to alternative 3, with the major changes being the sidewalk and the bike lanes are combined into a single active transportation route or a multi-use path. It still requires replacement of the storm system, and retaining walls are still required, but to a lesser extent. This alternative was the basis for the county's application to the federal government's Active Transportation Fund grant. This application was submitted in February of 2025. We do not have any update on that as of yet. There was, I think it was November 26th of 2025. It was the last background that showed which projects had been chosen in Ontario. I'm sure that there's another batch coming out, but we don't know where we sit yet. This alternative is excluded as it does not take full advantage of the remaining useful life of the storm system or the river crossing culvert. In 2025, I would say very late in 2025, or when we were making our decisions to get to budget, the OSIM report that we received indicates a remaining useful life of 20 years. Prior OSIM reports had not indicated this, and our assumption was that this would not need to be considered under the cycle of these particular roadworks. Delaying the storm system replacement to be part of the structure replacement would make for a better product and make better use of the money already invested in the existing infrastructure. Through this, we would exclude this alternative from consideration. So again, very similar cross-section. You can see that the road gets narrower, the sidewalk is eliminated, and we went with a 3-meter wide multi-use trail or active transportation route. Alternative 5. This alternative looks exactly the same as alternative 4 on the surface, including the needed for retaining walls. It does not replace the storm system, and it makes use of materials and construction methods that have a useful service life closer to the remaining life of the storm sewer and culvert. So we're using asphalt gutters and gabion baskets as examples and retaining walls. This alternative meets the desire for Cycling and Trails Master Plan compliance, reduces the scope and the cost, and still reflects the vision depicted in the ATF grant fund application. This is our recommended alternative. So just repeating the recommendations from the report here. Again, this is kind of the vision that we were going for. And any questions, comments, discussion with these?
Okay, thank you very much, Supervisor Potter. So I will put it out to council members if they have questions, comments. Councillor Gray?
Well, I'll kick it off. I do have some, not so many questions, more comments. One question I guess I'll lead with is how many fatalities have occurred on that roadway in the last 25 years?
To my knowledge, that number would be 0.
Thank you. So we have areas all around the county, which safety is of the utmost concern. And I can think of just this winter, I was coming in on Gray Road 5, approaching two people pulling a wagon at the top of Harrison Park Hill on a blind bend, and I slowed down, which was good because coming up the hill right behind them then on the curve was one of the city snowplows. 30 seconds earlier, those individuals were, who knows? There is an alternative pathway that goes up into the cemetery at that place. However, being winter, it's not fully accessible. We had a local cyclist, a family practitioner or a family doctor who was struck by a vehicle on top of Creamery Hill last summer on Gray Road 5. We have safety issues that are paramount, and I'm not minimizing the concern for pedestrians through here. I am one of them. I'm part of run groups and active individuals going through there on a constant basis and have been for years. But we cannot engineer our way to ensuring that there will always be zero casualties, zero fatalities. Gray Road 119 had a terrible cycling accident years ago that the county's really aware of. Sometimes we can do the best with what we have for funds. We have needs long-term, capital-wise, that are greater than what we have funds to provide for. I know being in Owen Sound, we've doubled, in my time as councillor, our sidewalk snow removal fleet. Yet, sidewalk snow removal concerns might be the most prevalent concerns we get as councillors through 4 or 5 months of the year. It is a constant. I think the alternative 1A, as is the way that this council should be going. I do think that if we think that alternative trail is going to be as well maintained as what we would like to hope or what we would see in that photo, I'm fearful that actually in reality, it's easy to pledge that. But Georgian Bluffs, even as a municipality, is not in a business like Owen Sound of sidewalk removal. So I think we are underestimating the significance of how difficult it is to maintain a level of service. So in actuality, you get 15 centimeters of snow over 4 months of the year. People will not be using that trail because you cannot maintain it fast enough. And the city of Owen Sound will not for 1 second consider expending our equipment beyond our borders to do the work. The county's not in the business of clearing snow. We're trying to get out of the business of urban responsibilities. That's coming up later. This is one where that would be wonderful, but we've got a grant here, and I question then sometimes yet the grants are great, but this is expending $2.173 million plus land acquisition costs to gain the benefit of a $312,000 grant. There's times when the grant process is, well, actually, it happens consistently in government when government offers you a grant and you walk into responsibilities or service levels that get more difficult to maintain long-term. So I think this is one of those examples. We can never guarantee zero. We can try our very best. $823,000 is not a nominal amount of money. This reconstruction project behind us here last year, which you're going to drive through again this year because it's extending up to Superior Street, reconstructing the water on the hill, was $4.5 million. So $823,000 is not an insignificant amount of money in terms of what's going into the road work. I think that's what we should be looking at. I think it's what we can afford in relationship to all the needs before the county, which we are certainly underfunded. We're all aware of that. It's no different than our lower municipalities. There's more work that needs done than what we have the monies for. We can't just look at budget in December and then be wondering, how do we get out of 6 or 7 or 8%? We had a great deputation earlier today. There's there's a reasonable ask for a countywide stormwater management plan, but there was no desire as of today to allocate dollars for such an initiative. There's lots of great ideas. There's lots of great need, but I will make an amending motion at this time that alternative 1A be the chosen path for county council.
Okay, I haven't seen any other hands up so far for discussion. So, I'm gonna look to Director Hoy before I accept the amendment with the seconder. I'll look to Director Hoy.
I just wanted to mention, thank you, Warden. I just wanted to mention a few things here. Just one is that this is still in the design process as well. As information has come up recently since we were told to do this report with the OSIMs, Georgian Bluffs possibly may not want any winter maintenance. We don't want to take on winter maintenance, as Councillor Gregg said. So it is in that spot where it's still pretty fluid exactly, if it's even achievable as far as some of those things. I guess just from staff point of view, our thinking was it was hard for us to go with the bare minimum because we're ignoring some major policies and we've got some safety concerns and we're ignoring the cycling and trails master plan. So it's hard for us to say, actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to put it off. But it's one of those, it's like every project, there's just pros and cons, and it's hard to know if everything's worth it or not, right? We're constantly making, assumptions or sacrifices from having everything perfectly the way we want. So there's some pros in doing the bare minimum, and that structure might have 20 years left. The storm sewer might have 20 years left. It would coordinate them better to maybe just, limp it along with the shave and pave for now. Like there is some merit to that, but we see that too. I guess from staff point of view, the kind of the positive of bringing this report today is we just didn't want to go down pardon the pun, go down the path of this design. If council has no interest in ever getting to the picture as shown, because that's a lot of work too. There's some certain things in this section like land acquisition. That's one of our narrowest right of ways as the top of near Creamery Hill that Councillor Gregg mentioned. That land should probably be acquired anyway. It's not like we probably should acquire it just because our right of way is not enough for facilities. Fiber recently went in. It's kind of right where we're going to be doing the work. But I just kind of wanted to give some context that's kind of where we're at as a whole. Just looking forward to, if we need to work some more on the design, we'd be willing to do that, obviously. But again, we just don't want to spend years on end designing this thing for no result yet.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Hoy. So it's been moved to switch it from alternative 5 to alternative 1A by Councillor Gregg. Is there a seconder? I see it seconded by Councillor Nielsen. So that's now on the floor for discussion. I wonder, Supervisor Potter, I wonder if you might then just, perhaps if we can get 1A put back on the screen so we can revisit that. And if you want to highlight differences, I've also lost the screen as well. Go ahead. Okay, so given that we're going to focus now back on 1A, did you want to, is there anything further? You defined all of them for us, but now that we're going to focus in on the original move for alternative 5, and now we're being asked to consider 1A, I wonder if you could just focus a comparison between the two. Thank you. And Director Hoy, I see there is ready to assist as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about this option is it just continues, a generally substandard condition for the next 20 years. And in 20 years, you're going to do something anyway, some sort of full reconstruction or something. So you're saving 20 years of, well, I don't know what you're saving because you got to pay for it anyway, but you know what I mean? It's just you're delaying the potentially inevitable.
Okay, so it's on the floor for discussion. We'll go to Councillor Pringle.
Yeah, thanks, Warden, there for that. It's quite an in-depth report and there's a lot of valid points to all the different scenarios there too. But I did, when I was all said and done, I did put my support behind the staff report on number 5, just for the fact that it's going to be a design project that we're going to see where it goes. This isn't written in stone. This is how it's going to play out. Something has to happen on that piece of road. It is a bad piece of road, and to Councillor Gregg's point there too, we got many bad roads in this township, but this is one of them too. So I think for us to go with number 5 gives us an opportunity to see what can be done. Do we need to go to the extent that what is proposed here now? We don't have to, but I don't think 1A is going to give us anything either. To do a like for like for the next 20 years, we're just going to open ourselves up to problems down the road. It is a bad piece of road in the county, but I would love to see what an alternative plan could be, whether going through number 5 and coming up with some different ideas. Do we want to take over looking after a bike path and sidewalks? That's probably a scenario that we'd have to have that conversation, and we aren't set up for that piece of it in the township. That's a given. But do we need to do better work on the roadway itself, and the infrastructure for the stormwater? I think that has to be looked at. So, just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? Councillor Nielsen?
Thank you very much, Warden Microsoft. I think for this one, for myself, it kind of comes down to what Councillor Gregg said and what Director Hoy said. If to give direction to staff to do what will be a substantial amount of work to do a design, if council isn't supportive of the cost of that or believes that the improvements outweigh that cost, we shouldn't direct staff to do that. We shouldn't waste resources, which is staff's time, if there is a thought that that's not going to be supported in the end. And for myself here, when we look at the way the road is now and the infrastructure that exists, get us to where that fulsome reconstruction needs to happen. You know, for me, it aligns with the costing now. We know it's going to be a significantly greater expense in 20 years to do the reconstruction, but then all the work's going to be done at the same time rather than doing, you know, a certain amount of work now that's going to have to be just to align with that timeline. So I look at the value and the use of staff's time and energy put into a project that I probably wouldn't support at the end. And so I find myself seconding Councillor Gregg's motion and carrying through with status quo and resurfacing now.
Okay, thank you. Looking around the room, confirmation online. Okay. Oh, yes, Councillor Eccles.
Tell me again, if we went with alternative 5, by the time we got all the design, everything else done, is it 2027 project, 2028, 2030?
Currently, it's scheduled for 2027.
And yet we've got 20 years left in the culvert that takes Potamani across the road. And alternative 5 isn't going to do anything with that. But in 18 years, 15 years, 22 years, we're going to have to tear it all apart and replace the culvert, according to the OSIM report, right?
Yes, that's correct. So in both 1A and 5, we don't touch the storm sewer and we don't touch the culvert. Road life expectancy is 18 to 20 years. That kind of aligns with when right now we're being told that the culvert is probably going to need massive refurbishment or replacement. So it's whether effectively we're going to add the retaining walls and the bike lane, or sorry, the active transportation route in alternative 5, or not, and effectively do a like for like in alternative 1A.
But there's really not any retaining walls, and there wasn't retaining walls, it was gabion baskets that I heard we were going to use here, which I'm not as much in favor of, having to deal with conservation and their ideas of where gabion baskets are used, and you won't get 15 years out of them, 18 years out of them. If we were going to do it, I suggest we do it with walls, but my thought is I'm the alternative motion, or go with the 1A and do the big type construction when Georgian Bluffs is ready to look after trails, sidewalks. Because I don't want to speak for Georgian Bluffs, but you're going to be doing trail work, have all the equipment to do that within a year's time. I just, as we said, it's 800,000 to 4 million, sorry, 3 million. This gives us the time to get the maximum out of that system before we have to replace the culvert. That's what I'm looking at. The 800,000 and alternative 1A seems to be the best to get the most out of our infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Carlton.
Thank you, Warden Matros. I have to admit, I am conflicted on this one because I would love to see the trails going through there as a safety issue for the people using that road. The idea, though, of spending that kind of money and having to go back in 20 years to do that is what catches me. With 1A, does it give an expansion to the road surface to allow for any, there's really no width beside the actual road going through there for anybody that's walking. And there are a number of people using that daily, whether it's walking or cycling. Does it expand that road at all to give them a little more safe portion to go? And yes, I would agree, and Deputy Mayor Pringle said it. We don't have the machinery to do winter maintenance in there. So we know that. It would have to be an added expense on the township to look after that. 5 is that ultimate now, but spending the money now and then spending it again in 20 years is not a logical thing in my mind to do. If 1A can give a little better experience for people using that road, I can be in favor of that.
Did staff have a response to that?
One A, as it's proposed here, is literally replacing what's there. And the reason that we propose it that way is that the existing catch basins are in a gutter. So they have an alignment. That's where the water is going to go to. If you were to try to widen the road, say we could manipulate it in some way and we got a meter on either side, just for this sake of the conversation, that would be beyond the gutter line. You want the water to come towards the catch basins. So you're actually tipping the outside of the road back towards the catch basins and back towards the road. That becomes a snow removal issue, as the blades will ride up on top of the pitched surface and it's no longer in contact with the road surface. So I'm not saying that we couldn't look at, again, another alternative if directed to do so, but fitting something in, especially in the gully where all those structures are, it would be difficult.
Through you, Warden, just further to what Supervisor Potter indicated, I think one of the key differences between 1A and alternative 5, outside of the cycling and pedestrian path proposal improvements, is there's no geometric improvements to the road. So it would literally be replacing, as Supervisor Potter indicated, what's there today in terms of pavement, not widening, not changing any of the geometric profiles, because as has been indicated, it is a tricky section of road to not just to navigate from a vehicle perspective, but also from a pedestrian cycling perspective. This would alternative 1A would just be a shave and pave essentially, and not, from one understanding, not widening any platform. It'd be basically replacing what's existing today.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the deputy warden and then over to Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Has any consideration been given to making it a one-way road and providing a little more room for pedestrians, cycles? I mean, I don't use the road at all, but from what I understand, there's a lot of traffic coming into the city in the morning, going out in the afternoon. There's lots of places. I'm thinking Burlington Bridge, they change lane designations depending on times of day. Something like that an option?
Everything's possible. Yeah. It comes down to like the headache that could possibly be called for anybody that's local to the area that wants to use that back and forth at any time of day that they're used to now. Also controlling that on the north end, you would need to control 13th Street, Summer Street, and 17B, possibly all the way back up to the highway or hour 17 to kind of control the one-way flow. Also controlling that at the intersection of 10th Street West, Highway 20, Highway 21 and 6 would probably be pretty difficult as well. But based on the fact that you had, like you said, a fairly decent peak number in the morning and a fairly decent peak number in the afternoon, we hadn't looked at it as a one-way configuration.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Nielsen and then we'll go to Councillor Carlton.
Thank you very much, Warden Microsoft. Just my comment here is, like, having attended a few good roads conferences and different speakers on traffic safety and such, a lot of it comes down to, if a driver feels uncomfortable, they're typically going to reduce their speed. And so when we talk about widening the platform in a section, or, you know, altering the geometrics that your sight lines are better and such, to me, are we then talking about the potential for speed increases as drivers feel more comfortable? In this stretch of road, I've been driven a few times, because of the narrow width, because of the houses that are really close to it, there's an instinct I found to drive, you know, pretty gosh darn close or near or less than what the speed limit of the road is, and not to be flying up the road. And so that's the kind of the other avenue where I'm thinking about the like for like currently, is that ability to kind of maintain that pressure on the driver.
Okay, thank you. Over to Councillor Carlton.
Thank you. Just to comment on the idea of making it a one-way at different times of the day. Young's Drive comes onto there, so you'd be trying to get people at that point and directing them one way or the other. I don't think the potential for one way exists there at all. As I said, I could live with 1A for 20 years if it was going to make it a safer road. But if we're getting like for like, I don't think that increases the safety measures.
Okay. Don't see any further hands up. So the motion that we have on the floor is that the motion be amended to strike out alternative 5 in the third clause and insert alternative 1A, being a rural cross section with existing configuration. That is what we're voting on at this point in time. All those in favor? And those opposed? Okay, so that motion is carried. Okay, so Madam Clerk. We'll go back to the original motion, inserting 1A. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Just get that back onto the screen. Receiving the report. Continue to consult with Georgian Bluffs. And to confirm maintenance and multi-use if constructed, multi-use trail if constructed, and that the transportation services continue to finalize the design summarized as alternative 1A within the report. That is what we're voting on now. We've got a question, Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you. And through you, at one point, Director Hoy mentioned about expropriation or acquiring lands on either side at some point in time. And alternative 5 included that as a cost estimate. It was indicated that land acquisition was going to be necessary regardless of options. Will staff be pursuing and bringing back more information in preparation for expansion of this road in 20 years? And just maybe we start looking at acquisition now, then instead of later.
Yeah, through your warden, that's a good question. There is a lot of spots in the county, as I said, Creamer Hill and some of those other ones, where we don't have enough right of way, especially with utilities being the way they are. So I know legal has been working on our new land acquisition policy. The next bunch of years, it would sure behoove us to start working towards getting the right of ways where they need to be. Again, some of the county policies, you know, where it says every county road should be 100-foot right of way. Does that apply, you know, in Big Bay as much as, you know, on Gray Road 3 somewhere? Probably not. But again, we just haven't got to the point where we've kind of got a full land acquisition plan for the foreseeable future.
My comment more implies is this decision to change the alternative does not prohibit you from pursuing those land acquisitions if and when they make sense. Thank you.
Just want to go over to the CAO as well.
Thank you, Warden, and through you. Just based on if this motion obviously gets supported as per the previous motion, alternative 1A, that probably leaves the second clause no longer required. So I don't know if the mover and seconder would be open to just a friendly amendment to remove that clause, because it's a continuation of alternate 5. And with it being alternate 1A, we don't need to have further conversations with Georgian Bluffs regarding the maintenance.
Yes, I did note when I was reviewing it and reading out the summary that it did say if constructed. So I don't think there's any harm in it staying, but for clarity purposes, I'll look to Councillor Carlton and Councillor Pringle. Would it make sense that we just strike that out? Okay, and the original mover was Councillor, oh, well, that was the amendment. The original mover. It was Councillor Keaveney and Councillor Dobreen had moved this original motion. Do you have any objection to that clause being struck out for clarity? Okay, and they are indicating they have no objection. Okay, thank you. All right, so we will look at the first clause and the second clause with the insertion of 1A instead of 5. That's what we're looking at voting on at this point in time. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? And that motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much. We are going to move on to our lunch break at this point in time. Madam Clerk, what is a reasonable time for us to return? Right. Okay, so if we can keep it to a half hour and come back here to 1:20, then we'll be ready to carry on.